There are also reports that ISIS has been funded by countries like Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia.
We're very, very concerned about exactly that reality. There clearly are divergent interests at play here, Katie. In the end, the United States of America is going to have to do what President Obama judges is in the interests of the United States of America and protect our citizens and our interests. And if there's a divergence with some other people in the region, so be it.
All right, joining us now to talk about that and to talk about the news, the breaking news as we take to air with the capture of one of the suspects allegedly responsible for the murders in Benghazi, Richard Perle, fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and former chairman of the Pentagon's Defense Policy Board and former Assistant Secretary of Defense. Hello, sir. Great to talk to you again.
Good talking to you.
Well, I appreciate it. Okay, first let's start with, if we can, if this has actually occurred, and I believe it has, the capture of Ansar al-Sharia's leader, Ahmed Abu Khattala, and he's on his way back to the United States. That's, any way you look at it, may be long overdue, but it's good news, I presume, correct?
It's good news for us. It's not good news for him.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, that I get. But it was a long time coming, and there are skeptics already who are out there saying the timing is a bit suspicious because maybe they knew where he was for a long time and just elected to do nothing until now because the administration needed something to show off.
I really doubt that, having served many years in government in both branches. The ability of our government to coordinate something like that is practically nil. I think it's just a coincidence.
And a good coincidence. Now, he's coming back, and I see where a judge has unsealed an indictment. If there's an indictment against him, as there was, to be fair, against Osama bin Laden in the Clinton administration at one point as well, do you agree that he should be treated as a civilian through the civilian court system, or with what he did, would you rather see him treated in a military way?
I think he should be in a military court. I think the idea of extending the full protections of our Constitution to terrorist criminals is ridiculous. It's absurd. He should be tried in a military court.
All right. Well, we shall see where this all leads to. Now let's focus on Iraq and where we are right now. The president sending 270 troops for training purposes, supposedly. I would imagine, though, sir, that some of those boots on the ground, which oddly enough the president said was ruled out when he spoke on Friday, some of those boots on the ground might be special ops forces who would give information to our bombers as to where to drop the bombs. Is that an accurate assessment, you believe?
I don't know what he has in mind, what the mission is for those troops. We have a large number of people in Iraq. Our embassy, I believe, is still the largest in the world. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people
in Baghdad.
In Baghdad.
Yeah.
So we need to protect them. And I wouldn't assume that there's more of a mission than the protection of American citizens in Iraq.
When you look back at the fact that we're totally, out, aside from what you just mentioned, embassy personnel, et cetera, but no agreement was able to be reached with the Iraqi government to keep troops there. I heard Paul Bremer last night explain that we insisted that the Iraqi government go through Parliament and vote on any agreement that we reach, as opposed to letting it just be approved by the Prime Minister, and also that when push came to shove, it was going to be something like 3,000 troops, which really would have been just a token force, not able to do virtually anything. So, do you think that this was to Obama's satisfaction, as Bremer indicated last night, that he was hoping that there would be no agreement reached and no SOFA agreement, and we would be out of there totally?
Oh, I believe he made certain there would be no status of forces agreement because he wanted to leave completely. Even though it was premature, even though it was foolish, and I suspect he now regrets it. But he wanted out. We could have had a status of forces agreement. And if you didn't want an agreement, of course, it was easy enough to make sure you didn't get one, and then use that as an excuse for a premature departure.
Let me digress for a second here. When Pat Buchanan says the other day that, we never should have gone into Iraq in the first place, and it was, it was among others the neocons. I never liked that word. I just feel that that word has subtle connotations. Does that bother you at all?
Well, it has connotations. I wouldn't say they're subtle. Look, it's Pat Buchanan. What can you say? He was opposed to going into Iraq. He misunderstood the reasons that some of us advocated it. We were not doing it to bring democracy to Iraq. We were not doing it, as he has sometimes suggested, on behalf of any other government. We believed the intelligence that was available at the time, that the CIA and other intelligence organizations with which we're allied in Germany and France and the UK, that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, and there was a danger after 9/11 that he would share those weapons. That was the only reason for going into Iraq. The idea that this was some sort of crusade on behalf of democracy is simply wrong. And after the failure to find the weapons of mass destruction that were believed to be there, people often as a kind of rationalization began to talk about the virtues of democracy. I agree about the virtues of democracy, but that was not the reason for going into Iraq. So for Pat Buchanan to claim that it was a mistake in 1983 seems to me to be rewriting the history.
Well, and by the way, President Bush went to the UN twice, pleaded openly with Saddam Hussein to obey the resolutions. He defied so many resolutions, and a majority of Democrats and everyone in the House and Congress went along with it. So it is a kind of a revisionist history, I believe. But what connotation, I mean, do you believe there's any kind of, do you believe that neocon is a code word of sorts?
Oh, yes, it's often used to describe Jewish Americans because, as it happens, some of the original thinkers whose ideas have now been characterized by this general term neoconservative were in fact Jewish. And it often carries conspiratorial tones on the part of people who throw the term around. The truth is that if you Google neoconservative and you read any number of, randomly read articles about neoconservatives, you will discover that the neoconservatives themselves are almost never quoted. That is, they are not permitted to define their own views. Their views are being defined by their critics, and in some cases, quite hateful critics.
Do you believe Pat Buchanan fits that description as someone who throws it around and has uses that connotation purposely?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And he's done this for a long time.
Okay, one more for you, sir. ISIS is moving the tanks and the Humvees that they seized, American tanks and Humvees, deserters left behind, American equipment, into Syria now. Not a surprise?
No, it's not a surprise. In fact, if you look at the mistaken American policies that have brought us to this situation, one of them is the way in which we departed in 2011. But the second, and perhaps more important, is the failure to recognize that if we stood by and did nothing in Syria, support would flow to the most radical elements. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. And so now we have a terrible situation in Syria. It has spilled over into Iraq. And the administration, astonishing as this may seem, is actually thinking about going to the Iranians to help deal with the situation that we allowed to develop and that the Iranians had been encouraging.
Sir, always great to talk to you. I look forward to the next time. Thank you so much.
All the best.
Thank you. Richard
Bye.
Perle, ladies and gentlemen. And we're coming back with the Malzberg panel. Don't go away.